Welcome back to the Milwaukee Market Update. We're covering real estate news and data and breaking it down to help you understand how it impacts your real estate decisions. Teaser for this month is having a good credit score no longer an asset. Nick, what can we take away from this month's episode?
It's springtime, but where are all the homes for sale? Why aren't the millennials buying homes? What is a loan level price adjustment? You've probably heard of it. We'll talk about it. And is a golf cart the best way to get to the grocery store?
I guess I can't wait to find out. We're here to give you the info you need to make the right decisions regarding your real estate. Should I buy a home now? Should I be selling? Is the housing market about to crash? Are these headlines that I'm reading, content I'm seeing on social media true or even relevant to me? If you're new to the show or returning because you found value in previous videos, it would mean the world to us if you could please take a second to subscribe. You can also follow us out there on I'm at TyAsh31 and Nick is at Nick Harrington28, or reach out to us anytime via info@houseworkscollective.com. I'm Ty Ash.
I'm Nick Harrington.
With Houseworks Collective at Compass, your local real estate experts. Let's dive right in.
Let's go.
Okay, let's get started with some of our quick tips here. So starting with home buyers, we got an episode coming out soon with one of our great lender partners, Joe, and he gave us 3 steps to really focus on when you're getting pre-approved. Those are credit scores and how are you going to monitor it, your job, do you have a 2-year history, what is your base salary versus what are your commissions and how can they be applied, and then also just the down payment and the assets that you have. It's very simple of have you paid your bills on time? What is your job history? And are you making enough income for the future to afford that home? And do you have the money for the down payment actually buying it? So those are a couple quick tips for buyers. What do you have?
Yeah, I think if you're starting the home buying process, knowing your credit is probably one of the most important things. That's really, if you don't have good credit, no matter what your income looks like, it's going to be very difficult to get a loan. Most apps with major banks like Wells Fargo, Chase, whatever it is, has kind of that speedometer sort of rating for what your credit score is. So know what your credit is, do everything you can to protect and repair your credit. Pay on time is going to be the big one. One other quick tip I have for buyers as well too is once you have a home under contract, accepted offer, first off, have like a little celebration for yourself to get that in today's market. But don't open up any credit cards or take out any loans until after you close.
Yeah.
I was working with a buyer for a closing I had last Monday, and I told them this, and they are kind of flipping up this home. They're doing some repairs throughout, and she completely spaced, was at Home Depot, and was ready to fill out the application until a light bulb clicked in her head and said, hey,
oh my gosh,
Nick told me not to do this. So thankfully nothing bad happened, but just one of those things that could easily be forgotten when you're under contract.
Don't change your
buy
financial
a car,
situation.
Don't get a credit card.
That's right. Next tip I've got, and I'll let you talk about investors. So sellers or homeowners, if it's in your plans to move, whether it's going to be sizing up, expanding your family space, if it's sizing down because you no longer need the space you have, we are reaching peak listing time frame in just the way that seasonality works here in the state of Wisconsin. Based on the percent list price received, January of this year in 2023, 96% is what the percent of list price was. Last year in June, we peaked at 104%. What does that mean? You might get 6% more for your home sale when you list in the months of June and around July. This is the time, so we're in the month of May. That means you need to have your home on the market here in the next 2 weeks in order to really capitalize on the very peak of the housing market each year. We've been giving the tips of getting your home ready to go, make sure it's presentable. Now's the time to strike. If you're like, yeah, we're listing our home, let's get things in order, make it a priority, and let's let it rip. And I know you got a tip for investors as well.
Yeah, for investors, I think it's very important to focus in on a strategy and become hyper-focused on what that strategy is. Understand what your buy box is, what kind of returns you're after, because it makes it a lot easier to find a property when you're focused on a strategy. It doesn't mean that you can't pivot, but I see investors struggle when they're kind of like, oh, I heard flipping is a good one. I've heard BRRRR is a good one. I've heard buy and holds. I've heard maybe we buy something and fix
objects.
it up. And while all are phenomenal strategies, if you're a younger investor or just new to investing, my best advice is to find one strategy, study it, and go forward with that until you get that first property done. Because that's going to be the best way, in my opinion, for you to just get into the investing space is find a strategy and focus in on that.
If you can't clearly define what you want and you can't tell everyone what it is that you want, it's never going to present itself as an option to you, because if you don't have clear goals and you're yourself, people can't read your mind nor know what you need. So if you can't communicate it, you're never going to get to where you need to be. So great quick tips to kind of get us kicked off here. Now let's dive into the numbers on our local market here in the Milwaukee Greater Area obtained through the MLS. So starting with residential homes in the Milwaukee Greater Area for April 2023 from the MLS. So starting new listings, 1,500 homes, down 27% to last year. That's going to be another one that we'll dive into. Not the greatest stat line for sure, new listings. We want more opportunities as we go into the peak season of the market. Pending sales, 600 homes, up 3%. Closed sales, 1,100 homes, down 25%. Days on market, 20 days versus 22 days a year ago. We're starting to see days on market drop again, meaning the market's moving faster. Median sales price, $318,000, up 6% to a year ago. Average sales price, $368,000, up 3.5%. Percent of original list price received, we're at 102% today versus a year ago in April, 104%. So down slightly, but still seeing a lot of listings come in over ask and getting accepted offers closing quickly. Inventory of homes for sale, the second stat that I think we'll do a deeper dive on here, 2,100 homes active for sale here in the Milwaukee Greater Area, down almost 19% to a year ago. And then months of supply of inventory, 1.9 months versus 1.8 months a year ago. Pretty unhealthy. We've said this, time and time again. 1.9, that's about half of the amount of months of supply of inventory that we really need to be in a more healthy, balanced market. So diving under the covers here into first new listings. So new listing activity again, down 27%. I think anecdotally, I was literally sitting in our staff meeting a month ago and everyone's like, well, it feels like there's more homes coming. And yes, like sheer number of units wise, yeah, we had 1,500 units listed in April versus 1,400 in the month of February. Usually we want to see that climbing at a more rapid rate as we approach that peak timeframe of June. I think the headline here is down 27% in new listing activity for the month of April 2023. That is the biggest decline year over year that we've seen essentially in the last 12 months. So new listing activity is still a challenge in getting units out there, and buyers notice it in their search. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I feel like we're kind of in Groundhog's Day with this podcast right now. At least the market is consistent, and it's been the same story for the last 3 or 4 months. That inventory has been very tight. There's still a lack of new listings that are hitting the market. You nailed it. Like we're in the spring, we're still in the springtime, I'd say, here in Milwaukee.
Sure.
Where there's more listings this month than last month. Great. But if we look at the year prior, there's significantly less. And everything is driving from this new listings, lack of new listings that creates increased competition because you've got a buyer pool that is growing, going after a shrinking number of homes, which causes prices to go up, which causes us to be in this competitive market where days on market is so it's competitive for buyers. And so it's been this story really the whole year, which is, I don't want to say it's like what the norm is now, because this is an unfortunate norm, I feel like, for buyers, but it has been really the tale of the year of there's just not enough new listings that are coming to the market to support the demand from buyers.
The correlation that you just tied there that sometimes is hard to see as we talk about it verbally is new listings being down 27%, active inventory being down 19%, pending sales, homes that have accepted offers on them up 3%. There's such a big spread between essentially as soon as a good home hits the market, it's pending. And we have a chart from Redfin on that later of we're actually seeing the fastest essentially rate of acceptance offers and under, a percentage of our inventory under contract in under a 2-week time frame. Definitely something that needs to be, acknowledged. And as we look at this, like how fast these are getting accepted offers is driving this inventory of homes for sale and the slowdown that we've had of new listing activity largely through that lock-in effect, right? People who bought a home in the last few years have a much better interest rate than what they could get if they went and listed their home and sold it. inventory of homes for sale down 19%. We have 2,100 homes available to sell as of the end of April. I think we talked about last month the flattening out of our inventory when we typically see that bell curve as we come to spring season. What are you seeing out there in terms of the inventory that's available out there, and how are we going to get more of it?
I wish I had an answer for how we're going to get more of it. I think the buyers that I'm seeing that are really succeeding now are the ones that, you've said this before, are obsessed with their search.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not uncommon for today's, Tuesday? A listing goes live Tuesday. By Friday, they have several offers and they're accepting an offer.
Yep.
And that's 4 days, 3 days?
Yep.
That's where buyers right now, the ones that are succeeding, are the ones that are on their search every day, and they're letting agents like us know right away when there's something that they want to go inside and see.
Yep.
Because otherwise, if you wait 2 to 3 days, you might miss the window to even go see that home and get your hand in the door to even potentially buy that home.
Yep. I totally agree. I mean, being obsessed with it, because at this point, buying a home is a luxury. It's not something that's just going to be like super easy to do, because what we've seen is relative to like the average rent here in Milwaukee versus what the average mortgage payment is going to do, including principal, interest, taxes, insurance, it's like almost 50% more expensive to own your home than to rent your home. However, that balance right there, rent typically lags and catches up to that. And what we're seeing today is there's not more inventory coming. You've got to lean into it and find creative strategies like getting a roommate or whatever it is. And then once you've accelerated in your career or whatever else, you kick that roommate out and you've got the home, but you found ways to offset that monthly payment. We got to be a little bit more creative, both the buyers as well as your agents, on how do we get something under contract if that's in your goals to buy home. Because though it looks like the better deal to rent today, we're going to cover later on of just how competitive the rental market here is and how fast those rents are climbing too. So like debriefing what this means for our home buyers, competition's likely going to increase with our new listings being down 27%, inventory being down 19%. We're in this huge imbalance of supply and demand, and we're going to see these prices climb. And there's other tertiary Midwest markets that have higher median price points than Milwaukee does. It's kind of the time to get in and get that price, because then on the opposite side, what we're seeing with economic uncertainty, that's usually a driving of mortgage rates coming down the future. It sounds like it's salesy advice, but the indicators are showing that there's a very good chance if you buy your home today, you're going to get a better interest rate in the next 12 to 36 months to refinance into. That's going to relieve a little pressure. You're never going to be able to get lower rents. You've never had your landlord reach out and actually say, hey, can I lower your rent for this next year? However, sometimes those opportunities present themselves in the home buying space. Let's dive into the two-family space.
Yep.
Sold listings. So again, two-family, duplexes, Milwaukee County specifically, sold listings, 100 properties, down 50% to a year ago. Active listings, 350 properties, down 43% to a year ago. New listings, 100 properties, down 33% to a year ago. Months of supply, 1.3 months versus 1.8 months a year ago. We're seeing that months of supply actually get worse here in the investment space. Median days on market, 11 days versus 15 days. We're seeing things move more quickly. And one thing to note here is the difference between some of our higher price point inventory and the lower price inventory. Our average days on market is 42 as opposed to 11 days in the median. We're seeing a lot of homes sell very quickly, but then we have a lot of bad inventory sitting out there that's selling for 100, 200, 300 days on market, whether it's dilapidated or whatever else, or people can't get financing for it until it finally closes or falls off the market. That's bringing that average way up. We're seeing very quick sales. Median sales price has returned up to $180,000, down 8% to a year ago. However, we're just seeing more sales as a mix be less than $180,000 than over $180,000 just because of content, what's actually available to buy. What are you seeing out there? I know you do a ton of work here in the investment space, duplexes kind of in the lower east side, the east side. What are you seeing in the investment space?
To me, the median days on market that you touched on based on the price point is so critical to understand, because duplexes that are more affordable under that 180K range, they're typically not as competitive. They're typically sitting on the market for a lot longer. But then you have these duplexes in the higher price pointed neighborhoods, like the East Side, River West, Bayview. Those are on the market for literally 5 days.
Yeah.
Waukesha, there was a handful of duplexes that were for sale. All of them under contract within the first, I think, 3 days. And so you have this significant spread of properties that are sitting that are typically need a lot of work to be done to them versus ready to go duplexes that are a bit more turnkey, that are moving quick. At the same time, though, there was a duplex that just hit the market in Harambe, 150K on Richards. That was on the market for 3 days. And Harambe has typically been a market that duplexes sit for a little bit longer. A little bit, typically average days on market are
usually a better skill set in terms of fixing them up and getting ready to rent again.
Definitely. But now I'm starting to notice that that neighborhood is getting more competitive, and that days on market is starting to move into the single digits as well too. So it'll be kind of interesting to see where this number goes as time goes on, but it's competitive, and there's few listings in the duplex and investment space. And there's deals to be out there. I'm seeing investors succeed purchasing these duplexes that have been on the market for a long time, that are willing to put the work into it. So their all-in costs are typically less than what they could sell it for, which is great because they're up instantly in equity. That does require a special investor that has the capital to make those repairs on the front end. But that's where I'm seeing investors succeed right now, because cash flowing properties are harder to come by in those duplexes that are above 180K, and they're extremely competitive to get into also.
You have to do the work to get the good deals this day. And it's a substantial amount of work sometimes. It's replacing roofs, it's new siding, it's complete unit turnovers inside. But if you're willing to do that work and you've got the systems in place or the network to do that, you're going to actually reap some of the benefits, because there's not a lot to pick from here. Again, 350 active listings and 100 sold.
Seeing 100 sold just seems like such a small number.
Such a small number. I mean, and it's what's crazy is we'll talk about this later, is Milwaukee, and I'll just bring it up right now. Milwaukee has the third most duplex inventory of like any municipality, behind New York and Chicago, with a significantly lower population. So for us being here local, we're just used to seeing more duplex inventory, and we've taken it for granted. Everyone else on the outside, out-of-state investors, whoever else, are like, holy crap, look at that. There's 350 duplexes available for sale. You guys have so much inventory. That's amazing. And that's one of those things that's going to continue to drive the price of these investment up. We're one of the very last remaining 1% rule markets where if you bought a property for 100K, you could rent it out for $1,000 a month, which typically with good, more average interest rates means you're cash flowing after your monthly payment, as well as your operating expenses of management, maintenance, capital expenditures, vacancy rates. That's what's always made our market so appealing. Is becoming less and less possible. So it's kind of getting in before that changes.
I was working with an investor the other week, and they asked me, they said, why are people selling all these cash flowing duplexes? And from the outside looking in, they're really wondering, am I making a mistake buying one of these duplexes? But being here in Milwaukee, they're comparing Milwaukee's market to their local market, where there's probably, 10 to 50 duplexes available for sale. And in Milwaukee, there are, what do we have right here? 344 duplexes for sale. And so it's just a disparity between how many duplexes are here in Milwaukee. And it's crazy. The third most city,
third
after
most
New York and Chicago, top 5 in population. Milwaukee's 32nd. It's insane how many duplexes there are. We could use more inventory, but
thank you to the Great Fire in Chicago, putting all of the brewery production up into Milwaukee and having us need all the housing for the workers. So that's where it all came from. But I think it's a good time to take a quick pause. Overall, what stats do you guys need? What do you need more information on? Put it in the comments below, and we'd love your take on what we've shared so far in the MLS and where we think this market is heading. We think it's going to be continued competition in the future. So moving on next to current events and highlights. So just local anecdotes. What are you seeing out there in terms of the average offers per listing that you are supporting a client on?
So I do most of my business in the investing space. In the duplex 2-unit to 4-unit. Anything that's been on the market for less than a week, that's a desire, that's a highly sought after neighborhood, several offers.
Yeah.
Anywhere from 2 to 5 is normal within the first week. Single family, same story. I've got some clients that I'm working with down in the Bayview, Oak Creek, Cudahy kind of area. Below 200K price point, that seems to be an incredibly sought after price point for a first time home buyer too.
Got a few of those buyers myself too. Yeah.
So it's like, it doesn't even matter the condition of the home for single families right now, whether it's move-in ready or if it's a flip, they're moving so quick.
Yeah.
And it's that's kind of what I'm seeing anecdotally, where winning offers are at or above asking, soften contingencies, or no inspection. And I feel for a lot of the buyers I work with that have wrote several offers over and over. It's easy to get discouraged, I feel like. I think it's very important to keep the end goal in mind that if you're doing the right things, you're seeing homes, you're writing offers that are competitive, you're trusting your real estate agent that they understand what a winning offer is, good things will happen to you eventually. But I do feel for the buyers right now that are getting exhausted, that do feel like, can I find that place? Because it is tough right now.
The process works. If you're shopping under 300K here in the Milwaukee area, you're going to have the most amount of competition because that's the millennial home buyer demographic of first-time home buyer. You're going to have, I've seen 10 to 20 offers that you're competing with. There's a lot of people there. It's going to go for asking because the listing agents are using a good marketing price, and it's usually going to be listed on Thursday, sold by Sunday, not sold, accepted offer by Sunday. And just knowing that you're going to go through the process, and we're looking for these windows of opportunity where somebody took a break because it's a holiday weekend or somebody took a break because the weather was crappy. Like, we are just doing the step in the process to wait for your opportunity to shine. And we're getting feedback each time, unfortunately, you lose. Where did we rank within other offers out of the 10 to 20? And if we know we're number 3, we might need to sweeten our offer a little bit on the next one so we could beat buyer number 2. That's what we're seeing today for local anecdote, what's going on. Now let's dive
in. A big thing there, though, is that you are getting offers accepted in these competitive spaces.
And it's usually not the first one we write because we are learning, reading, reacting to the small buyer pool that we're competing against by asking. We're doing the extra steps of calling agents before offers are being written. We're calling them after if we don't win, so we can advise our clients. Like, that's why they sign buyer agency with us and hires our agents, is to be their partner and get all the info they need to learn how to negotiate future deals and get them to their goals. Like, that is the whole reason we're here, is to have those conversations and learn, not just go, oh, well, guess you didn't get the house, onto the next one. We need to be super strategic in the way that we're giving advice back to our clients. All right, let's dive into some news headlines, starting with Milwaukee. So I think I already mentioned this already. House hackers, why investors love Milwaukee. Third most duplexes of any city in the entire country, trailing over New York City, Chicago, and obviously they have way more housing units in total. The next one, kind of sitting in this rental space, but I think it's probably most applicable to buyers. I kind of alluded to this earlier. The Milwaukee rental market is the 7th most competitive rental market in the country, behind cities like North Jersey, New Jersey, Miami, Florida area, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Omaha, Nebraska, Florida, Chicago, California. Like, we're up in this top list of some of the most competitive ways of how many prospective renters are coming in and trying to rent, how quickly are these getting filled, and what's the occupied percentage. Occupied percentage of rentals here in Milwaukee, 95.8%. So it's like almost every single rental in our market here is filled. And I tried to do a quick down and dirty math to see, is it really better to rent? We're seeing 6% year over year growth at a minimum. I'm probably a little bit concerned with that number of rents each year. And that's almost at the exact same rate that we're seeing home prices go up. So you can lock in your home price by buying, but your rents are going to be guaranteed to be going up 3 to 6% every year. What do you think? Rent or buy?
So
magic bullet. Tell me what to do.
It depends on your situation, obviously. Where, like, if it's a short-term place you're living in, renting is going to be the move typically. I think a time when, but like that, the conversation is, should I buy or rent? You know, and like there's not going to be one answer for just a golden nugget. It's going to depend on your situation. But I do think that the easy answer is, if you know you're going to be living in a location for a long time, buying a home is one of the best ways to have a forced savings account to create long-term wealth. Straight up, hands down. And I work with some clients that they see the housing and how prices have changed in the last 5 to 10 years. And they go, man, this thing was sold 10 years ago and now it's listed $200,000 more.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm just getting a bad deal. And you can look at it that way, or you can look at it that could be you.
Yeah.
The one that 5, 10, 20 years from now, you're that one that's selling their home. And there's someone going, man, this guy that owned it, he just made a killing. And
Yeah.
you're not going to see that with renting, you know? So
Yeah.
that to me is why I like buying in the right situations. Obviously, I'm not going to say everyone should
long
buy a
term.
home, but for the long term,
Yeah.
the forced savings account and the equity and appreciation, this tight inventory that we have in Milwaukee, we don't see that changing. That's, to me, the advantage of purchasing a home. And in the market we're in now, we're writing competitive offers that are going over list price, typically for a winning offer. So in the moment, are you getting the best deal? Depends. More likely than not, you're not getting the
Buying home
best
today
deal for a
is-
single family home.
Buying a home today is not about getting a deal. It's about creating the lifestyle that you want for your family, having ownership of the space that you have, getting to do what you want when you want, but then locking in your housing payment so you have predictability for the next 5 years, as opposed to potentially 6% or more growth in your rent and your living costs compounding each year. Because guess what? We're going to see more house price appreciation in our market when we're one of the most competitive markets. It's just the most likely scenario.
Yeah.
And because next thing we got here, millennial home buyers coming. I think I pulled this from Ethan Brooks. He sends out a great newsletter to everybody here in our Milwaukee area newsletter, local lender. Tons of young home buyers coming. We have tons of demand, and essentially what this chart shows is there's a peak on this chart. It's essentially just age 0 to 100. And we have 73 million millennials coming of age here between the ages of 25 to age 42. And the peak age right now of where the highest percentage of the population is age 29 through 34. So yeah, check out about your age, about my age.
Yep.
I just bought, a home recently. You've bought a home recently. We've bought property. Like everyone is thinking right now, and most of our peers are, I should be buying a home right now. That's like what my parents did. We're only at like a 50% home ownership rate for millennials. And a lot of people say it's going to be a renter's generation. That's about, I think that's almost 15 to 20% lower than what the total national average is for total home ownership rate. What we've seen time and time again though is that most every generation gets right back up to that 65 to 70%. It goes up and down a little bit, but there's 15% of this population that's going to be trying to buy a home over the next couple of years, and there's nothing to buy.
So on this note, I just read an article about millennials being no longer the top generation buying homes. Mm-hmm. That absolutely there are more millennials that are looking to buy a home than probably any other demographic. But last year, baby boomers accounted for more transactions than millennials.
Taking all the houses.
Here's some stats here for you. Baby boomers last year, aged 58 to 76, made up 39%, an increase from 29%. Mm-hmm. Millennials, 24 to 42 years old, only made up 28%, a decline from 43%.
Yep.
So we saw kind of a swap where millennial home buyers, percentage-wise, decreased year over year. Baby boomers, percentage-wise, increased year over year.
Yep.
And so I think it's a lot of millennials are at these points where they're buying their first home.
Yep.
That's typically most people in this age range buying that first home. And in a market like this, it's no inventory, competitive, which makes it difficult to be a millennial and buying the first home right now, I'd say.
Yeah. Mostly because the baby boomers have assets. They usually have another home that they've sold and cashed in on in order to buy the next one. They have better financing options and are able to be more competitive in a competitive market. And if you don't start the journey today, you won't be in the position to be that awesome, all those old millennials are just throwing around cash and throwing around their assets and buying properties way easier than I can as a first-time home buyer. That's what they have, the Gen Z and younger generation here. Like that hopefully will be the circumstance of a lot of our millennial home buyers is being in better positions of financial strength because they've started their home ownership journey in that forced savings plan.
Yep.
All right, what do you got here? We need more houses?
I'm going to pivot a little bit.
Okay.
This off script here, But we had a lender that came into our team meeting last week.
Yeah.
And I think what he talked about was extremely important. And I think we should talk about this now.
For sure.
So there was a headline that came out a couple weeks ago that basically said that if you have a better credit score, talking mortgage interest rates here, if you have a better credit score, you're going to be punished for having a better credit score. You're going to pay more. And if you have a bad credit score, you're going to pay less than someone with a good credit score. Yep. And I had clients that were calling me saying, do I need to crash my credit to get a better interest rate? Like, do I need to buy now because my credit score is going up? And I want to talk about what this is.
Loan level price adjustments. We got a heat map here. Run us through like what's actually going on.
At the end of the day, the big takeaway is if you have a better credit score, you will always have a better rate than someone with a worse credit score.
And usually lower costs of actually getting the financing as well.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's every scenario. Better credit score is good. You're going to pay less than a worse credit score. You're going to pay more. Mm-hmm. What they've done is they just simply adjusted what those costs are. Unfortunately, the costs were were raised for people with better credit score, and they were reduced for people with worse credit score. After all those adjustments are made, though, better credit score, you're still paying less. And that's, I think, the big takeaway from all of it that you need to know.
Yeah.
If you want, you should have a good credit score.
The biggest impact, I think, to take away is a person sitting around, I think this is the 740 to 760 credit score, putting down 20% down. They had the biggest increase in terms of their cost to get a loan. But a 3 times increase in their cost to get the loan took them from somewhere probably around $1,000 on a typical home here in Milwaukee in terms of the additional points you do for the loan level price adjustments to $3,000. So 300% increase sounds super insane. Like, what the heck is going on here? I'm paying 300% more for my home. No, you're paying more for the cost to get that loan. Getting 3% or getting 80% loan to value in order to go buy a home, and you have to pay an extra $2,000. In the grand scheme of things, we're kind of cutting hairs. Mm-hmm. Like, focus on the big things of don't let that be an excuse for why you don't buy a home is because it became a little bit more expensive. Because guess what? That's just the way the world works.
And you're still paying less than someone that has a 600 credit score in the same exact scenario too.
That's right. And essentially, I believe what that looks like, and that 300% increase is taking from 0.25% was the points or the percentage of your loan size that you're paying in cost up to 0.75. All in all, yes, you might have to pay a little bit more for your loan, but you're still getting a better deal than that person who has the worst credit score. They're just reflecting some of this and spreading out some of the cost to make it more affordable for all home buyers in total. Mm-hmm. Let's see, what else do we got here? Nationally speaking, so commercial real estate is struggling. Let's just jump down to that guy here, running short on time.
Yeah, I mean, not a surprise with anyone. A lot of macroeconomic factors that have really led to this, and this has been an ongoing story, I would say. Mm-hmm. The pandemic was really what started and kind of opened people's eyes to the ability to work from home. And now the leases that we're seeing for commercial, most of them are on 3 to 5 year plus leases. And so we really haven't still seen the full gravity of the impact that COVID has had on commercial leases. But if we look at markets like San Francisco that have been hit incredibly hard by essentially the commercial real estate and the vacancy of commercial real estate, it's not looking good, I would say. I hear little of new offices or new companies that are like, yep, we're going back into the office, or if we are, it's a hybrid approach, or if we are, we're not looking to purchase out this massive commercial space. And so I think what a lot of these major metros, Milwaukee included, at some point are going to have to realize is putting a plan in place to what are we going to do to solve this? And what are we going to do with all of this commercial space that's sitting vacant? Do we convert them to condos, to apartments? But this is going to be an issue down the road. And I'm worried too about these commercial brokerages and these owners that own these commercial spaces of what's going to happen with them.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a lot of back and forth of what happens and rules and regulations that slow things down as always. I'm sure somebody will come up with a great solution and make more than their fair share of money once they figure out a big problem like housing and commercial real estate issues. I'm sure that they'll dive through that. Let's dive into some quick national topics. We'll run through these super quick. I think the biggest headline in inventory nationally right now, 560,000 homes available as of the end of April. versus 380,000 last year. That's up 48%. So that's like some of the headlines we saw last year of we've got the bubble, there's inventory coming, prices are going to start falling, and we've definitely seen these bigger markets are swinging this inventory. But I think the more concerning thing is, nationally speaking, we're kind of starting to see similar trends that we see here in Milwaukee of, to start the year, there was 616,000 homes available. Now there's only 563,000. That's the exact opposite of the way inventory is supposed to work in a normally operating real estate market. Is inventory starts to climb into spring and summer. That's very weird in a national perspective. We can show that here in the chart, how it's kind of flatlining, very similar to Milwaukee. And this next piece here, so overall, like competition, nationally speaking, it's been about as competitive, depending on where you live, as it has been the last 3 years. However, here in Milwaukee, we've got this Redfin Weekly Housing market data for off the market in under 2 weeks. We alluded to this earlier. Right now in Milwaukee, about 25% of homes listed go off the market in about 2 weeks. In all honesty, that almost feels low to me, versus a year ago, 20%. And obviously in 2020, when we had COVID going on, about, only like 1%, 5 to 10% of homes came off the market in the first 2 weeks. We are seeing homes just get snatched up instantly, and we see it in the days of market. Competition is there. Don't let anyone, the data shows right here, and it's here from what we can see to stay. Inflation has kind of been a headline forever, but now it's kind of like trickling away, but we really still haven't seen the improvement in the number that we want to see for housing. Inflation, 4.9% in the month of April. But then what we saw in housing is an 8.1% increase to last year, and it's actually up 10 basis points versus a year ago. So housing is like a big part of inflation, and we actually saw it climb a little bit month over month. What's your read on that?
To me, it's kind of the same story that we've been seeing, where lack of demand. I'm kind of a bit surprised, though, that we saw an increase in housing. Granted, this is going to be a combination of mortgages and also of rents.
Yep.
So I think rents going up is going to be a big factor of why inflation's increased. But I do think there are some major metros that we're starting to see some peel back of prices. The major metros are going to have a larger impact on this number than a market like Milwaukee. Milwaukee being one of the 32nd largest city in the U.S.
Yep.
A city like New York is going to have a way bigger swing compared to national inflation because it's just a larger market, more volume, more dollars going through there.
Yep.
I'm kind of surprised to see this, to be honest. I know, like, if we zoom in locally at the Milwaukee 414 level, not surprised.
Yeah.
From a national perspective, I feel like prices are starting to soften in these national markets. I thought that'd have a bigger impact on the national inflation numbers for housing.
Just speaks to the stickiness of what kind of goes on with shelter and how long those leases are put in place. And then the last little piece here we have on interest rates, we're seeing at about a 6.3% interest rate today versus 5.3% a year ago. We're actually starting to see that gap close, where you're not talking about as many people saying, oh, you're paying 7%. I did 2.5. You're ridiculous for trying to buy a house. We're seeing that gap and that baseline start to change. And one of the things that we continue to monitor is we haven't seen the economy really slow down too much. We're watching the unemployment rate, and it's really pretty much stayed very healthy. However, we have this spread between mortgage rates and the 10-year treasury that at this point, there's almost 100 basis point difference between where those typically are correlated. So if we see some softening in the economic data, we could see a big snap from 6.3% interest rates to 5.3 interest rates in under a month. And here in Milwaukee, that would not be great for a lot of buyers that are like, well, I'll just wait for the economy to soften, but then you get that affordable housing because you've just saved 1% of your interest rate.
So now, Ty, to kind of bring this full circle, we've done a lot of talks about what's happening locally here in Milwaukee, some news headlines, nationally what's going on as well. What does this all mean? And let's just start with buyers. After seeing everything that we've talked about, the market updates and stats that came out, if I'm a buyer buying a home, what does this mean for me, and what's the big takeaway you would say?
Inventory is not getting better, meaning there's a good likelihood that we continue to see prices rise. We're also seeing competition stay elevated, if not higher than what it's been the last 3 to 4 years. We're seeing that out of the off the market in 2 weeks as a percentage of sales. So there's a high percentage of homes coming off the market in the first 2 weeks from when they're listed. And with everything going on, just generally speaking, with the economy of uncertainty and that spread in interest rates between what goes on with interest rates and what goes on with 10-year treasury, we could see a perfect storm of inventories not getting better, but interest rates come down. And what do most home buyers make their decision based on when they shop again?
Interest rates
And affordability. Like affordability might get better instantly, which is going to even drive competition further. So like that's what I would summarize as what's most important to buyers today is tight inventory, still competition, but could competition actually rise in the near future?
Yeah, because I've talked to a lot of buyers that have said, I'm waiting for interest rates to drop.
Yeah.
And I always...
You and everybody else.
Yeah, and I say that's fine. You know, it's got to make sense financially for you. But once interest rates drop, you're not going to be the only other buyer that's now entering that pool of buyers.
Yep.
So I'm with you. That competition will increase. We might see some more listings, hopefully, now that people are willing to sell their home, knowing that they're going to have to buy one at a slightly better interest rate.
Yep.
But I'm with you that I think interest rates lowering is just going to create even more demand than we have in a very tight inventory market.
Yeah, it definitely sounds cliche, but if you buy today, you lock in your price, and if interest rates go up in the future, you have a better rate than everybody else. If interest rates go down in the future, you locked in the price and you can refinance. Like you have options when you own the home, you own the property.
Yep.
That's like the best advice we can always give if it's in your goals to have that be part of your lifestyle to own. So knowing that most home sellers are also home buyers, all of that applies to you. You know, home sellers out there, but what's some things that maybe you see that you can pull through in terms of the competition, the interest rate environment? What do you see? What does that mean for home sellers?
Real quick, for home buyers, one tip that I have is the market's hot. You read the stats about most homes now are moving within 2 weeks of them going live and listing. Mm-hmm. As a buyer, you've got to be ready to make a quick decision.
Yeah.
Where you're seeing a home, you're walking through it, really use that time in your walkthrough to understand, do I want to make an offer on this home or not? You've seen photos, you've done your research, but that is what that showing is determining, because you have a very limited window, unfortunately, to make that decision and decide what is that offer.
Yep.
So you got to be ready to go and be in that mindset that if this is the home, that I'm willing to write an offer and make that decision quick. For sellers, you are at the point now where your home potentially is worth the most that it's ever been worth. Mm-hmm. Where if you're considering downsizing, if you're considering just selling your home, you have kind of this golden goose, and there are a lot of buyers right now. You're in control really as a seller, where you can kind of stipulate a lot of these pieces that historically you haven't been able to do, like closing date, like getting the best price. And so that's something to consider too, that right now as a seller, you have a lot of power. You're holding on to a huge asset that's in very high demand, and you can probably get the best return you've ever been able to see selling that home today. Yeah,
just knowing all these factors, the data will help you have confidence that if you've been delaying this decision because of economic uncertainty and that you don't want to compete with all the other buyers out there, you probably have the best financing available. You have the most assets after the sale of your home to be the most competitive buyer out of the bunch when you're competing against first-time home buyers. I think the most important thing for you to consider right now as a home seller is who you pick to list your home does matter, because the homes that are sitting on the market for longer than those 2 weeks are either not priced well, not marketed well, or honestly, the agent might not be having as much time to spend on your listing because they're working with more buyers, because there's just less transactions going on, and agents are compensated based on how many transactions they do. If you're working with somebody that doesn't have the team and a process and a structure in order to execute well, go into delayed, great photography, do all of the work it takes to get a home to sell quickly, even though it feels like it doesn't matter what you do, it's going to sell. I've seen multiple cases in the last few months where that is the case, where if it's not executed well, you can still have not the desirable outcome. That's what I'm seeing. What about investors?
Yeah, investors, right now what I'm seeing is that it's more and more difficult to find flips for investors. Kind of that rule of thumb that most investors that are looking to flip a property, they want their all-in price, so purchase plus rehab costs, to end up being about 75% of that sale value. That's how you're able to make enough of a return, pay back any sort of maybe hard money loan that you have on there, or whatever loan you're using. I'm seeing those are a bit more difficult to come by if they're listed on market. I think for investors, the biggest thing for you is get tuned in. If you're not local with an agent and with a group, that's going to give you access to off-market deals. Because that's where we're finding a lot of success right now for investors, is off-market deals. You want to make sure you have an agent like Ty or I, shameless plug,
of course,
that has connections with wholesalers, property management, lenders that are
Your full
connected
team.
with investors.
Yep.
But I would leverage that as an investor to try to find and create more deals, just because we saw the number of duplexes that sold last month down 50% year over year. So that's, to me, there's still a lot of duplexes in Milwaukee, which is great. We've got that. But that's one thing that we're helping a lot of our clients get creative with is giving them these access to off-market deals that we find and we come across.
Agree. I think the mindset today has to be, if you can be break even, meaning your rent minus your monthly payment minus your operating expenses and accounting for all the expenses that could happen in the future. If you can find break-even deals today at today's interest rates of 6.5% to 7% and be break-even, you have the opportunity to refinance in the future. And in all honesty, you have this huge tailwind of lack of inventory and a very desirable asset. Ride the wave, because honestly, at this point, you're going to look like a genius in 5 years when you just bought. You will make more money in real estate by just buying a property and holding it over the long term than you will from the cash flow alone. The cash flow is there as a defensive metric to make sure you don't lose the property.
Yeah. You're never going to get rich off of the cash flow.
Yeah.
Unless you have a ton of units, a ton of doors, which is something that I think is so important that a lot of investors might misunderstand. You know, like it takes time to scale up your portfolio for that cash flow to actually offset your living expenses. If you're investing, you're doing it for the long game. You're not doing it for the mailbox money that's coming in.
Yeah.
It's nice. You know, well, I'll take a couple extra $100 every month. But yeah, it's the fact that you've got an asset that someone else is paying for. You've got an asset that's appreciating in value over time, paying for itself. And also, you mentioned this too, a lot of your costs for a rental property are relatively fixed. You know, like sure, utility bills might go up, water bills and whatnot, but your interest rate is locked in. Rents here in Milwaukee have been appreciating rapidly year over year. You just said it's what, the fourth or fifth best rental market in the U.S. as far as owning a property and renting it out, not as far as a renter goes. So you have a lot of those factors too, that the return you're at now is probably going to be the worst ever return you'll get for a rental property looking long term. Yeah,
I totally agree with all those points. Definitely a time just to see if that fits into your goals. Like, again, it's going to be more work, but that diversification and that huge amount of upside, I think, in investing in real estate is something to just be considered. But moving on to the very last segment here. What's new, man?
What is new?
What have you been up to?
It's a good question. I was just down in Atlanta, actually, visiting some family I have down there.
Okay.
My dad lives in Peachtree City, which is probably 40 minutes south of Atlanta.
Okay.
And it's a golf cart community. So
no cars allowed?
There's cars allowed, but everyone, some of these golf carts I've seen are nicer than most cars. They've got rims, they've got speakers. Like we're talking $20K plus for an electric golf cart. Most people there would rather choose to hop in their golf cart to drive to the grocery store and back, which takes them an hour round trip versus just hopping in their car.
I don't see this working in Milwaukee.
I don't get it, but yeah, it was a good weekend, golf carting around and hanging out down there.
Very cool.
Yeah, how about you, man?
A wedding season in full force. Had a buddy's wedding last week. We were down in the Des Moines, Iowa area. It was actually the first, even though I'm from the Des Moines, Iowa area, and I have the option to stay with my mom, we actually stayed in the hotel for Friday and Saturday. So it was kind of like I went home to stay in a hotel, and it's kind of nice,
Where'd you guys stay?
I don't even know what it was called. It was kind of near the Jordan Creek Mall kind of area, kind of West Des Moines area. So that was solid. Great wedding. It was, I was in the wedding, so we did some golfing the day before. Nice. All the classic wedding party activities, and great wedding. Great to celebrate
them.
Did
you give a speech?
No speech. No, second command, which is it's like being the backup quarterback. You get to be part of all the events. You look important, but you have no responsibilities.
No pressure.
So you can drink on the party bus between the ceremony and the.
Something happens to the man of honor, best man. And you get tagged in to give a speech last minute. Man of honor. That's.
I could have figured one out. I think.
You would have been okay.
I've known the guy since fourth grade junior football, so I could have figured out something. It probably wouldn't have been a tearjerker, but I could have at least told the story of where he was, and he was my roommate in college, so we could have figured it out.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, definitely, good episode, lots of great content. Glad that we've got spring and summer ramping up here in Milwaukee. For everyone out there listening, if you found value in the information that we've covered here about the Milwaukee area, please subscribe and hit that bell notification button so you know when we post our next market update, as well as any other content that might help you with your real estate decisions in the future. Keep an eye out for some of our new bonus content coming out weekly, talking about buyers, sellers, investors. Keep an eye out for more content coming out from us. give us a thumbs up. Please engage in the comments and let us know if you enjoyed it, or if there's more details you want about the information we've talked about, or if there's other things that you're watching that you want our take on. So thanks, and we'll be back again next month with your real estate market update.
Thank you, guys.